So back in the autumn, I was kind of really fortunate to win Landscape Photographer of the Year special award for lines in the landscape. So there's my lovely certificate signed by Charlie Waite. I'm off to Scotland with Charlie in a couple of weeks, so looking forward to that. And then there's my award-winning image in the book. So really pleased with that, partly because I went out specifically to try and win the award by taking this photograph. So I'd planned what I wanted to do, so it was great that the plan came together. But as with most photography awards, you're limited to how much processing you can do before you submit your entry. Clearly, the organisers of the awards want the images to be a true representation of what you saw with the camera. So you're restricted to what you can and cannot do. And I think that upholds the integrity of the awards. With what we can do nowadays in Photoshop and Lightroom, it's really important to have that restriction. So kind of great that they kind of lay those out. But what I thought I'd do is I'd hop into Lightroom and just run through my process for developing that image and taking it from kind of this, or I'll show it now. So from this to the award-winning image, which is this. So going to hop into Lightroom, run you through that processing, and hopefully you might kind of enjoy that journey, and also maybe learn a thing or two. But let's have a look, and let's have a cup of tea before we start.
So there you have the image in its original format, obviously quite dark and needs a bit of work to make it that award-winning image that it was. I would say that Landscape Photographer of the Year um, doesn't support over-processing. So this image has the bare minimum processing applied to it to turn it from this into the award-winning image. There won't be lots of dodging and burning and masking and a whole range of things, because that's not allowed in the terms of the competition. So first thing I would do when I import the image, actually, my process is when I import images, the lens corrections are automatically applied. But just to show you how that works, I'd remove the chromatic aberration and enable profile corrections. Normally, when I import images, it does that automatically, but just worth checking that it's selected the right lens and camera. But it's up to you whether you have that automatically. Just saves me a bit of time that every image comes in and that is automatically applied. So first thing I want to do is to crop the image and get rid of these branches that exist on the right hand side of the image. I don't know if you've ever been to this location, but there's actually a kind of a barbed wire fence to stop you getting kind of down to the side of the river. So this was the best angle I could get, and it meant that these leaves and branches were caught in the side of the image. But I knew I was going to crop those out anyway. But just to help me visualize what I'm doing and see a bit better, I'm going to boost the exposure just while I'm doing the crop, just so I can see the extent of those leaves. The other thing I want to do is so get rid of those branches, or gone entirely. I want the bridge, this line of the bridge exiting in the bottom right hand corner. Just think that kind of stylistically works for it to be coming right out the bottom of the corner. So I've got that done there. Um, I also like the fact that the center of the image is right on this upright. So kind of the eye goes directly into the center of the image. If you don't know, by the way, if you when you're in the crop tool, if you press the O key or the on your keyboard, it will cycle through the different crop overlays. So just cycling back to the original point. So quite happy with the crop. So we'll leave it at that. And then I just need to reset my exposure because obviously I'd boosted that so I could see what I was doing. So before going to the exposure, because it's a dark image, and this was taken um, maybe quarter past, half past 9, and the cloud was quite heavy, which worked in my favor because I needed a long shutter speed to capture the light streaming across the bridge. But clearly, renders quite a dark image. You might be tempted to just go straight to the exposure. First thing I will do is change the profile color to Adobe Landscape. Adds a little bit of more vibrance into the colors. And then rather than go to exposure, I'm going to go to the shadows and boost those. Just working my way up the shadows until I'm about, just want to get some of the kind of detail coming out of the shadows. So probably about there. And now I'm going to alter the exposure. So probably this will probably go to about +1 on the exposure slider. So a little bit more than that. Probably about there. Now, one thing you will have noticed um, as I've boosted the exposure, you can see that kind of the image that's rendered is relatively blue and quite unnatural looking. Looks like a photograph taken in the 70s. So I'm going to just alter the temperature slider and move it to the right, away from the blue end and towards the warmer yellow end. So just going to keep an eye on the greens over in the trees and the mountains until the blue has gone. I'm not too worried about the blue in the water because obviously you think of water having a bit of a blue tinge to it anyway. But just going to keep my eye on the greens until it gets to a point where I think the blues have gone from there. So probably about there. I think the blues have disappeared. So taking away that blue tinge, still a little bit here in the foreground, but I'm quite happy with that because as I said it's water. So next thing I'm going to do is turn my attention to the sky. Um, it's grey and a little bit uninspiring at the minute, but I want to get a sense of kind of tension, a bit of kind of gloominess in that sky. So going to go over to my masking tool, select the sky. Lightroom does quite a good job of just selecting the clouds, so I don't have to edit out any of the uh, kind of the mask from the mountains. And rather than work in the tone panel, I'm coming down to the texture and clarity and dehaze buttons. I'm just going to kind of boost the dehaze kind of a bit until it gets a bit kind of. I want the sky to look a bit kind of angry. Add a little bit of texture into that, and then a bit of clarity. So I think that has that kind of the mood I'm looking for. I want it to be a moody sky, but it's added a bit of blue back into that. So uh, going to come back up, adding the dehaze and the texture and the clarity, it's making the sky look a little bit kind of blue. So going to, with my temperature slide, just take that blue out. Don't want it to look cream or yellow, but just grey. So um, quite happy now with that kind of that grey sky. It's got that mood to it. The Scottish Highlands, kind of Highlander. If you've ever seen Highlander, one of my favourite films, it's got that Highlander feel to it. Hopefully, so obviously altered the sky. Now I want to turn my attention to the main body of the image. So what I'm going to do again is create a new mask and again select the sky. But once the sky is selected, I'm just going to click those three little dots and press invert. And Lightroom now is selected the main body of that image. So going to, I think, just enhance the shadows a little bit, um, not too much. Just about. I don't want it to uh, kind of have that. Sometimes you boost the shadows too much, the image starts to look kind of a bit flat. So just a little bit there. Boost the whites a touch or two, and then just bring the blacks up. Um, just kind of fine adjustments, and I think that's starting to look pretty decent already. So probably done with the masking. So going to just come back to the overall image. So this is now working on kind of the totality of the image, including the sky and the main body. Um, going to boost my texture a bit, just to give it a bit of feeling in that image, and my clarity is going up a little bit. Sorry if you can hear kind of a bit of moaning in the background. That's actually my dog, well, one of my dogs, who's kind of lying on the carpet at my feet. Um, and then want to probably the final bits in the basics panel. Um, it's quite obviously subdued in terms of the landscape, but it's quite a bit of vibrance in these orange colours and the green of the bridge. So I want to add a bit of vibrance um, in there. So probably around here, and then a little bit of saturation. I'm not going to overdo it because I don't want it to look like an HDR uh, image, so I might drop the vibrance just a little bit, about there. Don't want it to look like an HDR image. I want it to look natural, so don't get carried away with the vibrance and the saturation. So next panel is the tone curve. I'm going to apply medium contrast. Probably taken the blacks a little bit too dark for my liking, so just going to go back and going to lighten the blacks a little bit, not too much. Probably about there. So looking good for me. So um, done the tone curve. Now in the HSL, I'm going to look at the hue. So I want the grass is looking a bit psychedelic for me. It's looking a bit too green, um, and it's not looking natural. So I'm going to boost the yellow a little bit, and then drop the green hue. I can probably afford to go quite away with the green hue. Let's see, how's that doing? Yeah, probably probably about there. And then I want to get the orange just popping a little bit. So I'm just going to use the orange just a couple of little bits. And then in saturation, I'm going to do a similar thing again. Just going to boost the yellow a little bit, and then drop the green to try and get those mountains looking a little bit more natural. Don't want them to look as if I'm having a psychedelic trip or anything. And then boost the orange saturation a little bit, and then luminance. I'm just going to have a play around. I actually can't remember how much luminance I applied. I don't want it to obviously go dark, um, but I think I just want to boost the orange luminance a little bit, because that's the standout feature of the image. That's if I go too high, it starts to turn the orange white. But just popping that a little bit, popping the yellow a little bit, and again dropping the green just a touch. Okay, so that's probably HSL finished with. Down into color grading. I'm not going to do a lot of color grading. In fact, it's probably so subtle it's barely noticeable. But I'm just going to, in the shadows, add a bit of a blue hue. So come round on my dial um, to about here. Uh, add a little bit of the blueness in, and then in the highlights, the opposite side. It's always a good tip if you're putting blue into the highlights, go the opposite side of the color wheel. Sorry, if you're putting blue into your shadows, go the opposite side of the color wheel with your highlights. Just boost those a little bit. There we go, a little bit more maybe. So barely noticeable, but hopefully, kind of you can see. In fact, I'll turn them on and off. You can just about see a difference there. Hopefully, you can see that on the video, but it's very subtle. So color grading all done. Now detail. This is this is where kind of people might think I've gone a bit mad with detail, but trust me, I'm going to drop the radius to 0.5, and I'm going to boost the detail to 100. Now that's where people probably think I've gone a little bit mad, but what I'm actually going to do is mask the detail. So if I press my Alt key and then move the masking slider, I'm going to go right up until everything disappears almost entirely, other than just kind of the main elements of the image. So you can see from that it's just the train, the bridge, and a little bit of the mountains that are receiving the sharpening. Noise reduction. So denoise didn't exist when I processed this image um, uh, to win the award. So I'm not going to use denoise because I didn't use it last time. I'll do what I did. I'm going to use the manual noise reduction. So I'm going to boost the kind of luminance, probably not too much. I don't want it to go too far on the scale. So boost the luminance by about so that's turned out about 12, and then color maybe a little bit more, but not too much. And that's it for the detail. Already done the lens corrections. Um, don't need to do anything in the transform. Um, but I will in effects add a little bit of a vignette in just to kind of darken the edges of the image a little bit and put more focus on to the center. And then the final thing, come down into calibration. I'm going to reduce the blue saturation. This usually helps pop the greens a little bit. So going to reduce the blue saturation um, 24, 24, I think. I'm going to about 24, 25, round about there. And then pop the green saturation up to maybe about 30. So that just helped pop the green a little bit. So overall look quite happy. Just final thing, I just think it's gone a little bit blue again as I've been processing. So I'm just going to add slightly kind of warm the image up a little bit, and then I think that's done. That's an award winner for me. So clearly, I don't know how long that's taken me, 5-10 minutes to do. Now clearly, an awards process where they specify that you can't do too much processing. So if I was processing that image for kind of other purposes, I'd probably spend more time kind of masking and you know, doing a lot more detail of creating an image that I want it to look like. But for an awards process, always check how much processing you're allowed to do. Landscape photographer of the year, um, you can do the basics, apart from that, you can't go mad. So hope you found that informative.
So there we go. It took 10-15 minutes to just go through that process. Now again, just emphasize, and I know I said a couple of times when I was processing it, you're restricted to how much processing you can do. And that image now is probably not exactly the same as the image I submitted for the awards, because there's always going to be a little bit of variation in kind of actually the way I look at the image each time I process it. But that's as close to the award-winning image as I could probably get. Again, took me 10 minutes and it probably went through it more slowly than I would do if I wasn't talking you through the process. So how do you get an award-winning image in 10 minutes processing? Hopefully that showed you how I achieved that. Hope you enjoyed it. I've not posted on YouTube for a long time, but I'm going to try and get back into it. So if you like these processing images, or processing videos I should say, let me know, and maybe I'll post some more. And if you've seen any of my images on Instagram or wherever, and you'd like to know how I processed it, let me know, and I'll go through that process for you. So hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers, bye.